Hello, listeners, and welcome to a Geek Tragedy. I'm Stephen, known online as Plague Man for various reasons, and I am your host. I'd like to welcome, as I ever do to our pod, the most erudite human and my best friend, Holly Properly, who is very sick today. Holly, how are you feeling?
I'm very sick today. My brain is mush, and I think it might be trying to come out of my nose. So there's a delightful
Have you got
visual
rid of all
for
the cat
everybody.
hair?
No, that was the weirdest thing. Mark, the other day I was sick, and basically, like, I have a very fluffy cat. For context, and every time
Where is this going?
I had a really stuffed up nose, and every time that I went to like wipe my nose, cat hair. Every time. I think he's like trying to like jam his tail up my nose while I'm asleep or something.
You do have a
Yeah.
very furry cat.
There
And
you
our
go.
voice, of course, that you can hear is our very own Salvage Man and Crafter par excellence, Mark Gaudry. Hello, Mark, how are you?
I am very well, thank you very much. I'm getting ready for an exhibition in my local town of local artists.
Oh,
And
you're not parading around naked or anything, I hope.
no, not that sort of exhibition. But I think I will probably be the strangest of the artists in our local community. So I look forward to that.
It's a bit away for me to come and see, but I'm sure we'll see all the pictures. And, of course, behind the scenes, our long-suffering producer, Kit, who should be named various things. Airfix Kit, Best Kit. I forget how many titles you've given Kit.
Aurora
Festive
model
kit.
kit.
Aurora model kit. Yeah, I try to come up with it. Well, we try to come up with a new one every week, but Airfix and Bestest have stuck so far. Mark keeps trying to make Aurora happen, but yeah.
Well, I'm sure our guest might possibly
drum?
be aware. Do you want a drum roll for this?
No, drum kit, that's not bad.
Okay, no.
Delightful.
Well, our guest this week, which I'm very
He's
pleased.
missing out now, look.
How are you, Stephen?
Dude, how are you? We know how you are.
Well, you're missing out the whole thing. See, Mark will not pay attention to the script.
No,
So
I don't. I'm
basically, once
completely.
he said, "How are you?" I go, "I'm fine." And then I say, "Last week we finished talking about the horror of surviving in the aftermath of the post-apocalyptic world." Although I have no doubt that we'll be back there at some point. And in recent months, we've somehow managed to get ourselves in some sort of order and do 3 related pods in a row, which is followed by a guest. We ramble a lot, which means that we could probably only for 1 episode rather than 3. But anyway, said to a guest. Usually we meander into a completely unrelated guest to the topic, but we've been discussing, and today is the exception. We've been doing post-apoc stuff, which is related to sci-fi. So, we're going to go down that road. Honestly, usually I'd ask Holly to introduce the guest, but she's not well, and I'm lazy. So today's honour belongs to excellent Mr. Caudry, who has trained our guest to build steam trains in the 1700s, which is how they met before they time travelled to now. Mark, over to you.
I'm allowed to do it now. Okay, fine.
You are, yes.
Our guest this week is an old friend of mine who I was honoured to work with on Doctor Who and has since gone on to incredible heights within the Hollywood industry as a concept designer, and his name is Matt Savage. Matt, really good to have you on the show.
Hi, Mark. You're inflating my ego with that intro. That we'll quit it there for the niceties. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
You are too humble, sir. You are too humble.
This is how we met Mark. Like, whenever we introduce people to Mark, we're like, "Mark, amazing, made all this stuff for Doctor Who, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Shut up, guys. Just shut up, guys."
Yep.
We
still do that. It's quite funny.
Yeah. Wherever we go, Mark, it's like...
Well, I have a piece of Mark's handiwork on my shelf behind me, which I think was given to me in 2005, just before season 1 was on TV. So I have Captain Jack's blaster from season 1 of Doctor Who, which I designed and Mark and his colleagues built. Way back when.
Well, that was from
cool.
the Christopher Eccleston series, wasn't it?
Yeah,
so it was the first series.
The Second World War.
It's the Empty Child, isn't it? It's the
yeah.
That's still my favourite episode. Oh, two-parter, really, wasn't it? But that was still my favourite story to work on. That felt like classic Doctor Who because it was a scary. Yeah.
It was.
Absolutely terrifying, completely terrifying. I was 15 when that came out, and
Bless
I
you.
was, yeah, very scared. But then again, I'm scared of everything. So, as we will no doubt discover when we talk about some of Matt's other work.
Here's that great bit in the episode where Eccleston looks at that big smile on his face and says, "The tape's run out. You know, the tape ran out a while ago," and he's still talking. And you're like, "Oh, he's in the room with us."
Yeah.
Oh,
Great.
no.
Good stuff.
Episode, loved it.
Ugh.
Squareness gun. There you go.
Yep.
Mm.
Or banana gun, as we also called it.
Right. So, there you go. Mark has introduced Matt to the pod. Holly, would you care to introduce the pod to Matt and explain what we're kind of going to be doing in the next hour?
Yeah, of course. So hi Matt. We are we are three people who know each other basically through LARP and the world of LARPing. We have been friends for, well, I've been friends with Stephen for 13 or 14 years. I've known Mark throughout the last, what, like 4, 5, 6,
A bit longer than that, probably. Yeah, it's close to 6, I guess.
Is there
Oh,
running around Napoleonic forts? When was Napoleonic forts?
Oh,
During the Napoleonic era? I don't
Yes.
think we've known each other for that long.
no, not even with time travel.
I don't think they called them Napoleonic forts during those days.
They just called them forts, I think.
Yeah.
But no, we've known each other all for quite some time, and during lockdown, and after we decided that we were going to do a pod about LARP, and that's how it started. It started with us talking about LARP, our experiences of running games, building props for games, and creating beautiful things for LARPs across the country, and potentially even Europe, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. And then we sort of ran out of things that we desperately wanted to talk about, and we took a break, but we didn't stop talking as people, and a lot of our conversations went like this podcast. We talked about the things we love, what interests us, what got us started on our respective career paths, our hobby paths, all of the things that we love about what we do and why we do it. And now you're here and we get to talk about that with you and find out what you love and why you do what you do and all of those excellent and intriguing things. And I would say let's try and keep it PG, but we never do. So, have at it. Whatever you want to say. Kit can always cut terrible things. Not that anyone would say any terrible things. I'm rambling now, and someone really
the
needs to
worst
stop.
language you've ever heard.
Okay, cool. So, yes, we've done a lot of deep diving into sci-fi and stuff recently, so it's been great. We've skirted through like War Worlds, to deep diving Star Wars, post-APOC stuff, and we've really shared our huge and absolute joy in sci-fi things. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of stuff that, I mean, War Worlds is a big thing I've noticed on you've done some great concept work there, and I want to talk to you about that later on. But we talk a lot about how literature has changed formats, and it's turned from books into radio or radio into film and backwards and forwards again, and we've really enjoyed that. And now we kind of like to talk about, as Holly was saying, what kind of triggered us to get there. So we're going to ask you a bunch of questions to start off with, essential pod questions about what makes us weird geeks. You're going to sneeze there, Holly. Muted herself, not enjoying the great sneeze after all. Sad time. So, first question, big question. Your first big memory of the beginning of this road. Everyone who listens to this pod will know that I'm going to say my first memory was my mum taking me to see Star Wars at the cinema when it came out, waking up and seeing the Star Destroyer chasing the blockade runner and going, and that's my first big memory. What's your kind of?
They're going to be so cliche and so obvious. I think probably hearing the Doctor Who theme tune, even before seeing the show, that's an indelible memory. I was born in '79, so I missed Star Wars in the cinema, but I remember seeing that on VHS when I was 3-ish.
Did you record it off the telly?
I did have
Or
it
was
off
it
the
record-
TV. This one was probably rented, and then we taped it off ITV, so it had all the B&Q adverts in between. But I remember. I mean, I for some reason the thing I remember the most from Star Wars is the closing ceremony. The image of that walkway is really
And
clear.
the roaring Wookiee.
Yeah. So the two biggest cliche things you can think of are mine.
They're the best. They're the best memories. It doesn't matter the cliche. They're still.
Yeah. Well, and also the theme tune, like music is. So I don't know that sort of burns a hole quicker than images. I think at a certain age, the theme tune to the Tripods as well.
The Tripods. That was so good. They should have never finished it, but
yeah. Well, I mean, I remember loving it, and then I went back and watched it, and it's quite boring.
Yeah, never go back.
It's quite long, and
My friend,
I mean, you remember the Tripods, but they're barely in it.
Yeah, I got them on DVD. A friend gave them to me, and I was like, I'm not going to watch this. I'm not. I don't want to watch it. I remember it being gorgeous, and I think it's going to be bad if I watch it again.
But it's like old Doctor Who episodes. We'll tell you about it afterwards, Holly. It's kind of set in the War of the Worlds world, but
War of the Worlds where they won.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay.
It's kind of cool. I mean, the books are cool.
Yeah.
The BBC VFX work is really good, but it's just like you could just watch a highlight reel, and that would be great. The episodes are really long and really boring.
Yeah,
but you're right. Though we talked a lot about music, didn't we, a few pods ago, and how much that really does kind of. I mean, the Blake 7 theme tune, for example, is like kind of there in my brain for a big kind of early memory. It always makes me happy. But yeah, see, Star Wars and Doctor Who, they're a good mix.
Staple.
Of saying I was born in the 70s, really, and became a geek shortly afterwards. It's a common answer for that. Yeah. If not, if you were born a bit later, everyone says Pokemon. Bizarrely, there's two staple answers.
Pokemon was big in the 90s. It's just.
I think, Mark, you want to talk about Jerry Anderson?
Well, I've got a whole list for you, Matt.
Should we go with the Jerry Anderson to start
with?
I
think we'll start with that. I mean, what were Jerry Anderson productions part of your childhood, Matt?
Yeah, they were. I remember. I think the first one because they were repeated. Some of them were repeated on ITV. Like things like UFO. I remember watching UFO, and that sort of freaked me out a bit. I found that quite scary. A lot of that.
It was one of the darker ones, wasn't it? For Jerry Anderson.
Yeah, totally. So UFO, I think I watched first. About 92 or 3, they reran Thunderbirds. So I saw that when I was about 12. I remember watching.
I've heard of that.
What was that?
I've heard of Thunderbirds. Yeah.
She's so young. You're just showing off now, Holly.
I'm just getting involved. So I'm going to go back on mute now because I think I need to sneeze.
Sorry, what did they rerun?
I remember seeing Stingray.
Stingray.
Captain Scarlet. I think the ones I enjoyed the most were Scarlet and Thunderbirds. I came to Space 1999 a bit later on. I enjoyed that. I remember watching Space Precinct going out live.
Space Precinct. I've forgotten about Space Precinct.
That all about?
Yeah, that was kind of the end of Jerry Anderson Productions for me, really. So, okay, so my question for you is, I think the vehicle designs were, Jerry Anderson Productions were always noted for classic vehicle designs. What would be your favourite out of those?
I always liked Thunderbird 2 with Pod 4.
Yeah,
with that. Thunderbird 4 was always, they're my two favourites, I'd say.
Yeah, I think they would be most people's favourite.
Yeah.
Those, and for me, I think the Eagle transporters from Space 1999, which is kind of a similar design concept, though, isn't it? Pods, they're carrier vehicles.
Yeah, I referenced the Eagle a lot. I think a lot of people are really fond of that one.
Yeah.
It's iconic British kind of TV from that era, and everyone kind of remembers it. Every page I look at on Facebook that kind of comes from that era, it's on there somewhere. That and the Liberator.
I liked the big pink car. There you go.
Are you being deliberately?
Yes, Belady.
No. I had one of my friends when I was a kid had all of the Thunderbird's vehicles, and Thunderbird 2 was the best because you could put loads of stuff in it and you could like fly it around, and it came with all this cool stuff.
It's
But
almost cuddly, isn't it? It's nice rounded shapes, and you always want to hug it. Or am I just weird?
I mean,
No, I
want
get
to
that.
hug it.
I'd give it a hug for sure.
Yeah.
I want to hug it in the same way I'd like to hug like a tortoise. Kind of feels quite tortoisey.
I don't want to hug a tortoise.
I'll admit.
Not one then, have you?
Right, I'm admitting something here. That the first time I saw Matt's design for the Daleks, I really wanted to just go over and give it a hug, because it was like seeing an old friend, but an old friend who'd had a really good facelift.
It was a good time, yeah.
Yeah, it was. And such an amazing design. I know another one of my questions was going to be, how did it feel to be given the chance to redesign such an iconic piece of sci-fi history?
It felt really natural because Edward Thomas, the designer, didn't know this about me when he hired me, but I'd been drawing Daleks my whole life, so I know the geometry, I know the panels, I know how many spheres you need. I just purely through repetition, I knew where stuff goes, and it always bothered me in comics when they got that wrong. So just do it right. There's 4 that way. There's that, So I had that muscle memory ready to go. So when they said that's what you're doing, it's like, well, let's go. I was probably, because I was 24, so I was a bit naive and a bit cavalier. So I probably didn't fully consider what we were doing. It was just super exciting, and I kind of got to do my own personal greatest hits of what I wanted to see on the Dalek, what didn't work, what should be just a bit thicker. Because we call it a redesign, but it really wasn't. It was more like a rejig, because I didn't want to lose any of the segments. I wouldn't want to redesign it, but I do want to get in there and make the you make the eye a lens. I don't know why you don't paint the bullseye on it like they did in the 80s. You make it a lens and you put a light in there, so you keep all the same things, but let's just go through every aspect. Let's look at the lights, let's look at the eye, the gun, and just tweak it. And I'm talking about it like I did it 5 minutes ago. It's 20 years ago, and I was just scribbling away, but it was I loved it. I've had I think 3 jobs in the last 20 years where I've gone to bed looking forward to getting up and driving to work. Like, I just want to be there and do it because I know what I get to do tomorrow, and that was one of them. And I loved it.
Yeah, I would say that out of all the people I worked with on that production, I felt the most affinity to you, because I felt that the two of us were really fanboying the job.
Those are Geek triggers right there.
Yeah. I just felt like you had that real core enthusiasm of like, we're working on Doctor Who. Yeah, and that's what I had as well.
I think Holly wants to ask a question.
I do. It's kind of a bit of a two-parter, because when you rejig something, when you redesign something, when you're looking at kind of all of those specifications, and I would love to know how many spheres are on a Dalek. That just that just sounds like a really cool piece of knowledge to have. But were you, and you said you weren't nervous about it and it just felt like really natural and stuff, were you kind of daunted at all by what the reception might be? Because people obviously are so
Yeah.
You know, like the fandom for Doctor Who, just like the fandom for Star Wars, you change.
Yeah.
You know, you make Ewoks blink, and you've got a riot on your hands. Like,
Yeah,
were you
rightfully
nervous at
so.
all about that? I know it's awful, isn't it? They shouldn't blink. Ewoks shouldn't blink.
I again, naivety and being cavalier and being 24. I didn't even consider that what we were doing wasn't right, which is maybe the wrong thing to do. I was designing it for me, knowing what I would want to see, which is completely narcissistic and egomaniac. But I kind of there's so many things I don't know what to do with. That one I instinctively knew what to do. The next week we had to do Rose Tyler's bedroom, and Ed and I we like, I don't know what to do. I mean, what does a 16-year-old girl's bedroom look like? And we were like a room full of guys were completely stumped. But give us like the Dalek, because I was fine. But I think it was age and naivety that I would now, with the rise of social media, where the feedback is instantaneous after the trailer, and you write the show off based on those things now. Back then, that feedback period was a lot slower, and I guess you had message boards, because 2005, I don't know.
Era of MySpace. There's MySpace and Bebo.
Mhm.
That's when I was just getting into social media.
There's no Facebook yet, no Twitter.
No.
Or maybe it was in its infancy, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I think Facebook was just about around, but no one used it.
Yeah,
It
wasn't the Wild
MySpace and
West yet.
MSN Messenger and Skype and stuff.
Oh,
Skype
I
was
loved
good.
MSN Messenger. It was the place to be every night.
I thought that
Every
was
night.
the future. When a friend of mine sent me an instant message, I was
Yeah, and
I would be in
now
a chat room on Yahoo going like, "There's loads of people here that I'm talking to at the same time. This is incredible."
yeah, and now suddenly, you know, people are taking themselves on retreats.
Look at this! Look at us!
Together.
Look at what we're doing. It's amazing. Anyway, was there a second part to that question? And can I just add that, like, when they came out, I love the Daleks. Like, I'm watching Doctor Who since Horns of Nimon. When they came out, I was like, this is incredible. I love it. This is perfect. Lovely job. Excellent.
They
Superb.
felt, to me, I don't know whether this is part of your thought process or design brief, but they became tanks.
Yeah.
And that's what they were.
That was on the mood board before I do anything. And actually, this came from Ed. This is something he drilled into me in a Mr. Miyagi wax on, wax off way. He was like, research. I started drawing, and it's like, where's your mood boards? Where's your research? It's like, well, I don't need that stuff. He's like, no, go and research. So I had pictures of tanks, pictures of finishes, chipped metal, anything that would bring it into that world. But a tank, I mean, they were always tanks, but they were just tanks made of plywood.
Could, just for the listeners, Ed?
So Edward Thomas
There you go.
was our production designer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, keep saying Ed, and I imagine people at home might be going, who's Ed? Because there's bound to be at least one listener out there.
Well, I remember Ed showed me when I first went for my interview, he showed me a draft sheet that you had done of the new Daleks with loads of different paint jobs on, even down to camouflage and stuff. So it was about maybe 10 different paint finishes on them.
Yeah, I remember that sheet.
Was there a second part to your question, Holly?
The second part to my question was, can you tell me off the top of your head how many spheres are on a Dalek?
No. But I could
draw it,
I
right?
could draw you. I know. I can draw you the plan of the skirt area. There's 2 sections. There's 3 sections where there's double spheres. I could work it out, but it would be boring. But yeah.
There's that many.
that many, and the ones you can't see. But I mean, that's just incredible, because like I think it's a huge testament to how, because I can't do that. I have the thing where you can't see things in your head. I can't remember what that's called,
yeah.
but
I have
kind
the
of
thing
like
where you can't read and write properly. Like I'm really dyslexic, so I spent my childhood drawing as opposed to learning how to read and write. So I,
yeah,
it's like it's a compensation thing, I guess.
but like I can't translate anything. Everything I see in my head is words. I can't.
You sound
I
like everyone I've ever worked for.
I'm the same with Holly. I can't. I'm not good at.
and I'm really bad, and I mean, you know, my day job I work for a design agency, so I'm constantly having to teach myself how to translate these things into my brain. But the fact that like I would need to know exactly how many spheres there are, but you don't, but you can draw it and it can be exactly right. Like that I the way that different people's brains work
I
just
know.
fascinates me. It's absolutely incredible.
Part of
And
it is a muscle memory from having just. I think part of my experience as a child was being quite obsessive about the things I liked to watch on TV and carrying that into drawing to just continue the experience because we didn't have hours and hours of streaming or internet. So if I really enjoyed a film or a TV show, my way to continue that would be to just repetitively draw in a way to kind of understand the thing. I don't know, that was
What were your big shows in that era?
other than Doctor Who. I guess Star Trek, TNG, because that was on every week on BBC Two.
That was really great when it came out because there was no sci-fi or anything, and suddenly it just appeared, and
Yeah.
it was glorious. Yeah.
So definitely that. Red Dwarf was kind of one of those fun things because it kind of looked a bit like Doctor Who with the miniature work.
Yeah.
So I always loved that. Trying to think from that period. The 90s were a bit crap for sci-fi in the UK. You had weird stuff like
You could watch Lex, or
I remember.
did you ever...
Yeah, Lex was like a weird comedy Dune.
It was very strange, wasn't it?
Like it had weird scale. Like the ship was huge and
was. What
Was
the
it
other
an
MTV
insect?
things?
Sorry, I
Sorry,
was
go on,
going to say, wasn't Lex the spaceship and it was an insect?
Yeah, it was like a dragonfly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry,
What was the other... That was MTV, wasn't it? There was another MTV show that was out at that time as well, and I can't remember what the hell it was.
There was a cartoon called Ion Flux or Eon
That's
Flux.
it, Eon Flux.
Yeah,
That's
that
the
was
one.
great.
Yeah, that was really good.
But it's a
Didn't
weird
they
time.
make
The
it into a
BBC,
terrible
we had things like
movie?
the Crime Traveller and Bugs. You remember Bugs?
Yeah. Yes, just about.
Leapers.
It was Brian Clements who created the Avengers. He tried to create the Avengers in the 90s and it didn't work.
Yeah, the 90s were a real no man's land of just kind of what's happening with sci-fi, and then it kind of, I think Farscape and Stargate and stuff happened at the end of that of the decade, and
Yeah, Farscape was glorious though.
And everything started to evolve, and then we kind of got into the noughties, and it got better. Anyway, let's move on from our general meandering of what the hell was on TV in the 90s, because I'm sure that's not what the show's about. I'm sorry, I regret asking the question. Move more into kind of where it came to us. I just to finish with the Doctor Who stuff. I really love the stuff he did with the Cybermen as well. The head design for that was just rocking. Loved it.
I got to say that was a much bigger team effort. That one, I was sort of one of about 7 or 8 people that contributed. Like the Dalek was kind of something they gave me to look after, but the Cybermen was a much more evolving thing.
Yeah, I saw your original sketches to where it ended up, and I still love it. It's still really good. I didn't like some of the designs as Cybermen came out, but that one was particularly cool. Anyway, I just thought I'd add that in. But I don't want to spend too long on Doctor Who because we've done quite a lot on that. So Mark's done the redesign of the Cybermen thing. I guess we'll kind of pick up with can you name a few of the designs that you create that you're most proud of? Sure.
Well, the big one right now, which I'm still sort of high as a kite on, is Alien Romulus. That was that's the most contemporary thing. I did the ship designs for that movie, inside and out. Trying to think what else.
That was really good. If you haven't seen the movie, you're going to really love it if you're going to see it soon. I'm not going to talk about the actual movie itself because that would spoil it, but the design, the look of it, both Mark and I have seen it. Holly hasn't seen it yet, but we love it. It's very back to the 80s. It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
it's really immersive.
It's a really great looking movie. There are a number of designers working on that, and it's just that was a really nice job. It's really good people. I'm really proud of that. Alien is another huge chunk of my childhood. That's I feel like you grow up on the fairy tale stuff like Star Wars and Doctor Who, and then when you're about 12, 13, you start looking for something a bit more adult, and Alien kind of looks and feels like Star Wars, but it's not. It's an adult horror movie.
There's less light and things eat you.
Yeah, not keen. Not keen.
Go on. We talked about Alien quite a lot, and our love for it, particularly the first two films, or Holly's bizarre love for the fourth film.
I love the fourth one. I love it. It's great. It's got Winona Ryder in. You can't go wrong.
The director, fantastic director. Some of his other films are just brilliant, but
no, it's great.
Perhaps he should have been in it. That might have helped. Get his point across. Anything else? Any other bits and pieces you really stick out in your brain that you really enjoy making? Because you said you love going to work for the Daleks, and it sounded like there might have been other bits you really liked going to work for.
Yeah, Alien was one I would go to bed thinking about what I'm doing the next day because I was loving that. I was really excited to do The Force Awakens because Star Wars wasn't quite the overmined thing it is now. And it had been away for 10, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got that job, I was super thrilled. I couldn't wait to go and do that one.
Was that your first Star Wars production? Or
yeah. Because I was working with you when the prequels came out, when the final prequel came out, about 2005. And then there was nothing for a good, I think, 10, 15 years. So it was super exciting. It was coming back. I was desperate to go and do that job.
I think there was a lot of expectation.
Yeah.
On the next trilogy coming out.
Yeah.
Rogue One, I think, which you also worked on. Yes.
I did the first 5 movies. I haven't done any. I did one of the TV shows, but
I love the way you say that so casually.
I did the first 5 movies and one of the TV shows.
Do you think it's crazy that there are so many Star Wars movies? Growing up, Star Wars was this premium thing where there were 3 movies and they were really special, and now there's so much.
We've had this conversation.
I'm really okay with Star Wars. I like watching all of it because to me, I'm still 7 or 5 or whatever when I watched it all first time around. Mark hates it, and Holly's kind of
Yeah. I don't hate it. It's always looked beautiful, but I think the storytelling is just.
Yeah, I mean, like the outside of the first 3 is what I mean. You kind of why do we need this? And
I was the target audience for when the original Star Wars came out. I was 16 years old, and I saw it in the cinema as a 16-year-old total nerd. I went, "This is glorious," because you'd never seen anything like it before. It was totally unique. I mean, okay, 2001: Space Odyssey or Dark Star kind of did a bit of it, but nothing on that scale with that amount of action and joy to it. And it was a game changer. So those first 3 films will always have a place in my heart because it was my age as well. It was just perfect. But I mean, to be able to work on those and to have those on your CV, because your CV is just to die for. It's fantastic.
It was great. Rogue One was the best one to work on because they had the legacy sets like the Death Star, Yavin. They had all of that physically, and the prop work, which is what I was doing, was all as close to the 1977 movie as we could do. So that was that was the best one to work on.
So. How did that feel, because you were effectively reworking other people's previous designs, do you? That's got to be a different process to here's a blank, here's the script, and we work through and create something with no prehistory to it, no there's the forerunner.
The way we would do Rogue One compared to The Force Awakens was to sort of the method actor approach, which would be to design the props the way the prop makers would make them at Elstree in the late 70s. So we went to Baptiste, who's the armourer who supplied all the things like the Sterling machine gun. We would go and source the original things and build off that.
As a props maker myself, I love that, because that was going to be another question of mine. Is you, as a designer, have to have some concept of how these things are built.
100%. My relationship with prop makers started with Mark, and then particularly on Star Wars, I would the prop master was very keen that I go and spend time with the prop makers every week, and just see how they do it. Specifically with Rogue One, that was don't think like a designer, think like a prop maker back then, and go and find, because I guess the most famous example would be Roger Christian, who did Luke's lightsaber. They had a Ralph McQuarrie design for it, but they didn't have the money to make it. So Roger Christian went to a camera shop and just said, "What have you got?" And they pulled out the Graflex flash handle,
which I have here.
Here's one I made previously.
And then, so that's a flash handle from a camera. The bulb would go in there, the dish at the back, and you'd be like, "Geez." So he added the fins.
Holly is blown away.
Yeah, but it is beautiful.
I think you've just broken Holly.
So it's not designed.
It's just what it is.
They built it from what they found, and it's better. Like, it looks better than the Ralph McQuarrie concept in this instance, because it's engineered and it does something, but you don't know what it does, but someone has spent the time to make it look like it does something.
Yeah. Holly, you've been LARPing for like 10 years. Whenever we build a prop, we have to go and find it in a bin somewhere.
I know, and but you see, the thing is, and we've had this conversation because one of the very, very, very first sort of, forays into talking to people live that we ever did was interviewing Mark about work on Doctor Who and Torchwood and all of the crazy props that he made out of things that he found in skips. And and when you can see that, it sort of, when you kind of go, oh yeah, that is a bit of a Dyson, or that is a bit of like an inhaler, that's a windscreen wiper.
Yeah, you can't unsee it.
I mean,
sorry.
But it doesn't ruin the magic of anything. It doesn't take anything away from it. You can just kind of see kind of an extra layer. You can almost see the humanity that went into building it. But Luke's lightsaber is such an iconic piece of like, you wouldn't expect it to be anything other than what it was built as, and being able to kind of just see, okay, yeah, I can see what this is now. Yeah, you can see it at that point because there's the button and it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Can I add your
statement? It wouldn't be as cool as that, because that's come through an engineer, and there's a port. I guess I don't know if that would be the bit that goes into the camera. There's all this, that's a clasp to hold the bowl, that peg. But it doesn't matter. All you see is a piece of engineered metalwork. I love that. I love that about design, and that's why you have to work with prop makers, is because sometimes it has to be a designed, bespoke thing, but like not always. Often it can be go and find the coolest thing you can find, modify it, twist it, paint it, and you're done.
This was kind of tangential to another question I had for you, because when when we were working together on Doctor Who, my department was not exactly well equipped and not exactly well funded, so we had to
a lot.
we had to interpret Matt's designs a lot. and come up with something which vaguely, in some cases, resembled it. And how did that feel for you compared to, as you've said, that your designs now are line for line, that before we started the podcast, you were talking at how they take your 3D designs and literally use those as 3D prints?
Well, first of all, on Doctor Who, the fact that you were even looking at the drawing, I found really deeply flattering. I couldn't. I was just staggered that other professionals, because I was 24 and I was brand new. I was just like, I couldn't believe people were taking me seriously. I felt like that was all great. And working with prop makers, if something's approved, I tend to show them halfway through the design process, because if there's a hinge or a moving element, they might say, I've got this hinge, I've been waiting years to use this mechanism. So I never ever take any kind of offence when something is modified, particularly by prop makers, because they're doing that for a reason. Doctor Who, it was always money and time. But I mean, saying that, the Captain Jack gun up there, that's like pretty close. I mean,
I think it was probably the closest we got to one of your designs. I think pretty much everything else was constructed from found pieces.
Yeah, and that's a really good baptism by fire. I think that's how you should enter the industry.
How staggering is that for both of you, though? Because like Mark often says when we talk about his days in Doctor Who that he got designs and was really quite frustrated by the fact that he couldn't just assemble what he wanted to assemble and had to like really go through like difficult process to get what he needed. And now 20 years later, you can just 3D print stuff, right? That's really easy. And that must be really weird to like move into that trend. Like, see that happen in your industry, to be able to suddenly do that. That must be the real.
Yeah, obviously it's a game changer. I think something we found on The Force Awakens was there was this consensus that everything is going to be 3D printed now, and the first prop got to set and fell apart. Just because it wasn't a bench build, it's I'm sure. I mean, even that is now 10 years ago, so I'm sure there's been advancements. But I mean, it's an amazing tool. But as with the camera to painting, it isn't everything. So it's really good for rapid prototyping. If you need something now, you can print a version to show someone. But I remember being staggered. I'm still staggered by it. But it has, the prop makers are still on the bench building. But they'll augment it with, if there's a Greeble or something that they don't have, they can print it and stick it on. So it's just another thing in their arsenal.
I think it's probably part of my brain, but I'd probably rather have someone like Mark build it for me from scratch than have it 3D printed, to be honest. But
it's like the difference between 3D printing for designers and prop makers is like AI for writers. Like it's a good tool to give you a basis, but you always want that human touch on the top. Like you're always going to want that sort of that the unique attributes that can only come from one person making it. Like you can look at people's designs, you can look at people's work and the props that they've made, and you can say, like if you're good enough, if you know your stuff, you can say like, Mark Caudry made that, or that was designed by Matt Savage. That, and it's the same with it's the same with writing and stuff as well. And it's really interesting to see how like those things develop sort of separately, but there's still that same necessity for.
As an owner of Mark's kit, right? You get to go, Mark Caudry made this. Not like I 3D printed it. And everyone's like, you printed it. And I'm like, yeah, that's right.
And even if you 3D print, you still have to sand and paint. We can't do that yet. So it's just another one of those things when, like AI, when it comes on the scene, everyone thinks that's the end of everything that came before.
The only tool in the box.
And then it settles down over 5-10 years, and then it just becomes another really useful thing you have if you need.
Well, I should have brought it in with me, but in my workshop I've got the original 3D printed Dalek sucker, which kept on snapping off.
Yeah.
And
you
they
had
were just
claw as well, didn't you? You had a 3D printed claw.
Yeah, which was printed too small a scale.
Yeah.
So they chucked it in the bin.
Yeah.
And I went, nope, that's not going in the bin. I'm having that.
I remember that, and I remember you showed that to me because that was one of the things I designed. Because I was desperate to give the Daleks a claw, and I asked Russ and I said, "Can I?" And he let me because I used to love the Peter Cushing movies, and they all had claws.
Oh, the pincers.
Yeah. But I remember you had that, and I didn't realize that was 3D printed at the time. I had never heard the term 3D printing or growing, so I just assumed someone had sculpted that.
It was available, but not to us.
No.
As anything that was going to be 3D printed, we have to find somebody else to go and do it. I'm sure what was my department is now racked with all sorts of 3D printers.
Our departments have a bay of them.
Yeah.
So the miniature, in an art department on a movie, you would have 2 or 3 model makers who are doing. There used to be white card models of the set to show the director, and they still do that, but they also do a hell of a lot of 3D printing.
You must have worked with. Do you know Rob Jose?
I know Rob really well.
He's a friend. He's an old friend of mine from LARP days, and I know that
exactly. Yeah.
That's what he does. The white card. Models.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, good bloke.
There we go. A story of 3D printing. Cool. So let's move on, I guess. Let's move on, I guess. Do you have any questions, Bean? Or do you want me to just run into the one I was going to ask about War of the Worlds?
You carry on, and I'll just whatever's in my bonds, I'll just say it.
Cool. Yep. We're going to ask you about franchises you hadn't worked on and that you'd like to. And I saw your the War of Worlds concept art, and we've talked about War of Worlds in here quite a lot, and we all love it. And we've talked about how bad the last movie was, and how we'd love to see another movie, or similar. Is that one you'd really like to work in?
I'd love to. When the BBC did their, I think the rights became public domain about 5 or 6 years ago. So the BBC jumped on that and made their version from about 2019. I did send them a CV because I was the things I want to do. I really go after. If I hear it's going into production, I did. So I'd love to work on a proper period. I thought the BBC doing it would be great. That on paper that sounded so good because they do BBC still do period very well, and this is period with a twist. And that I watched an episode and a half of their new one and gave up.
Yeah, same here. It was not what you were hoping for, was it?
I don't know. It went in a weird direction. But I love the book. The book is possibly, maybe my favorite book. I love the Jeff Wayne. A friend of mine worked on a sneaky Jeff Wayne movie version, which that didn't happen for some reason.
Because there's a stage show, isn't there?
There is a stage show, yeah.
We should go and see that together at some point. It's very good. It really is very good.
It's one of the things I love it in every iteration. I don't mind the Spielberg movie. It's not had he made Spielberg doing War of the Worlds should be everyone's favorite film. The combination of the guy who made E.T. and Raiders doing War of the Worlds, it should have been a slam dunk. And maybe had he done it in the 80s, maybe that would have been the time to do it. But it's that's a deeply flawed movie, but I'm still fond of it because it has tripods and death rays. And
is that the iconic bit, the tripods?
Yeah,
you want to kind of get them.
There's something.
I love your concept art from them. They are beautiful.
There's something about that. It's so alien. Three is a number that we don't relate to. We're binary, 2 legs, 2 arms. But there's something primordially scary about something that big as well. That's just scary. Yeah, I think that's why I love the Tripod TV show. It's the imagery that I was drawn to.
How did you feel about the George Powell original War of the Worlds?
I liked it as a kid. I haven't seen it probably for 30 years, but the sound effects are burned into my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Or
All of that's good. When I was growing up, when I was a kid, it wasn't War of the Worlds because they weren't tripods.
Yeah.
So I like it. It's just not right. I mean, no one's done it right. That's why we need to do it again.
I was really confused when I saw tripods because my first experience with War of the Worlds was watching that video that my cousin had or something. I was 5 going, oh, this is exciting. And then those kind of flying little wingtip things. You're like, great. And then I watched, I've read more stuff. And what's going on here? That makes no sense. This American movie is right. No.
The design of those reminded me of the bases that you used to get on Airfix kits, model Airfix kits.
Yeah,
curved, almost wing-like things. So, yeah.
I love that book because it's literally science fiction. The reason they have tripods is because the gravity is stronger on Earth than on Mars. So the creatures get here and they can't move around, so they build the tripods to move around in. It's so smart. For a book so old to be considering the gravity on 2 different planets is I love all of that.
Is that sort of something that, especially with things like Alien and having to design ships and functional things that fly through space, do you have to consider do you have to know a lot of physics, consider a lot of physics,
assume a lot of physics?
Yeah, to make things that would actually function. Or do you just kind of give that a bit of a?
It's going to be a no.
Well, I think you form follows function, so you have to consider those things. Engines have to have a relative size to the body of the ship that you believe they can lift. It depends what you're working on. On the whole, Alien, that universe is it's a Ron Cobb sci-fi. So you do, but not entirely. I just finished on a thing called Project Hail Mary, which is an Andy Weir science fiction book who wrote The Martian, and he is white hot on physics, science. So in that instance, we did have to really read up, and that was tricky.
Because you worked on The Martian as well, didn't you?
Yes, yeah.
I think actually we just need a list of all the productions that you've worked on for our listeners. Yeah, we'll do that in the credits afterwards.
I need to update my IMC.
Be like the Star Wars trawl, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a design, obviously you don't have to name names or designs, but you've looked at and gone, well, that won't work.
Yeah.
That wouldn't fly.
All the time.
Does it anger you?
Today, yes.
I can imagine that's probably really frustrating because looking at something and going, I know that wouldn't work in the context it's designed for.
It does, but I'm in such a small fraction of the audience. When I watch anything, I'm always judging the art department work, finishes, the design. But I'm such a small fraction. It's like if when firemen watch something about a fire and and how they handle it, and they go, that's wrong. Police do it, doctors do it. So you always annoy someone. I'm often annoyed.
Does it take away knowing how all of the things work and knowing all of the steps and the processes? Has that ever taken away from your enjoyment of science fiction as a genre? Or
I was going to ask that about Star Wars, particularly with all the films and stuff.
Yeah, definitely working on 5 Star Wars movies has ruined Star Wars forever.
Oh no.
Well, I mean, it's just it's sometimes you're so close to something. With Alien, I was so close to that movie. The first time I watched it, I just can't separate from the experience. And the script, every beat. But it's more a case of there's individual things I can't. You can never watch the thing you've worked on with fresh eyes.
Okay.
But I feel like I've been quite lucky because I had to turn down Blade Runner 2049, which I was mad keen to work on, but in not working on it, I had the best experience watching it, and I love that movie. I knew nothing about it, and same with Dune. I haven't done any of the Denis Villeneuve movies, but then you get to watch them, so it's.
I was going to ask, are there any films that you couldn't work on, that you offered but you couldn't work on because of other commitments that you've gone like, no?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably Blade Runner was the big one, which I couldn't do because I think I was on Rogue One. But it's as Mark would tell you, I'm sure, and I learned the phrase from him, it's feast or famine. You either get 5 job offers all at the same time, or you have 6 months where there's nothing going on.
It is the industry, though, isn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah, you have to diversify a bit, but no. On the whole, no. I've been quite lucky. I've had to turn down lots of stuff, but the big one I didn't do was Blade Runner. But then I loved that movie so much. It was a blessing almost not being involved with it.
Oh, good. So when I was bringing my son up, this is a kind of random tangent, but leads into a question. When he was very small, which was kind of like about 10, 12 years ago, because he's almost 13 now, when I was sitting, trying to keep him getting to sleep at night, that kind of stuff, and it was late at night, and I would deep dive my way through things like IMDb and stuff. I came across back then, like this short film called Reign of Death, and I thought, what's this got to do with some of my Doctor Who active people? And I watched it and went, this is interesting, weird ending, but interesting. And
made by a weird young man.
Yeah, you directed that.
Yeah.
And what was that like?
It was really good fun. It's really expensive making your own short film. But
it's a 5-minute film, just for the reference of those people that are listening to us. It's a 5-minute film. Do you want to describe it just briefly?
Yeah, please do.
So it's a 5-minute film. There is it starts kind of like with a dead body and a kind of a film noir cop, but set in the future, and they're investigating what you think is a film noir cop, and they're investigating the murder of a person, and there's a robot that is assumed to have murdered the person, and there's a chase, and it's all very exciting, but it takes 5 minutes, and it has a little bit of a twist at the end, which I won't ruin for anyone if you want to go and watch it. And I watched that and went, wow, this is interesting. And it was really great because it was 2009?
Yeah, exactly.
There we go, for my old brain. And it was really good. It was it was just, I was actually blown away by how good it was, because there was a lot of stuff trying to be like that on TV and in film, but it wasn't as well structured or done. So yeah, sorry. How was it to make?
Well, it was, I guess, a bit therapeutic after 4 or 5 years of just doing other people's things. It was sort of just like a release of just doing something I wanted to do. I was really interested in directing it at that point, and it was nice. I mean, I called on a lot of Doctor Who people. It was just a nice, interesting thing to do.
Because the robot looked gorgeous.
Yeah, we were super pleased with that. It was nice to design things for myself as well. That was like I was really into film noir and doing a very literal version of Blade Runner, where Blade Runner is very sophisticated film noir with androids, and where this was more of a literal take on that.
I was really impressed with how well it came across. It was 3 a.m. or something. I watched it the first time, and it was all kind of, am I actually watching this? What is happening? It was so odd.
Yeah. It feels a bit naive now looking back. It's sort of I think those kind of films are born out of energy and a bit of naivety, because I'm just going to do it. And I've considered making short films now, and I just think, how do you do it?
Are you watching it, Holly?
Holly,
Maybe.
Busted.
No, I just wanted, you were talking about the robot looking really cool, and I wanted to see the robot, and then IMDb started playing a clip, and then I got sort of really sucked in. It's really cool.
It's nice when you do something like that. You find it's if people don't have the time to work on it, you completely understand. But then you find someone who's like, oh, I feel really passionate about props, or I'm really passionate about VFX or design, and people kind of come out of the woodwork, and you sort of have to curate that a bit. But it's nice to just get this kind of we're gonna make a short film, and some people come along and do it with you. I mean, I didn't have kids at the time. You know, it sort of made it a very different time in my life where I had the time to do something in my evenings and weekends, which
I can appreciate that.
It's just that time has gone. But it was it was fun. I do it again. I just it's just time and money. I mean, I'd love to try again now because I could pull on so many different people. But
Well, kids grow, and then you'll find more energy later, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. I certainly feel like there was one point where I was just, I need to do more, and I feel a bit more relaxed. But it might come back because it's a really lovely feeling doing something like that. It's really nice to know someone out there saw it, because I did it purely for the sake of doing it. It was just.
I wouldn't have found it if I hadn't gone down the IMDb rabbit hole. But when I did, I mean, you made more than just the one. Didn't you?
Did 3 or 4.
I'm sure I remember watching more, but I remember that one the most.
Yeah,
I think
Mark was involved in 2 of them.
Yeah, Mark was saying earlier that was the one I wasn't involved with, I think, weren't you?
Yeah. But we both had not access, but we between Mark and myself, we were a couple of years into Doctor Who, so if you need something, the location manager of Doctor Who drove me around Cardiff, one morning just to find somewhere to shoot it. It was nice because at that time I was part of a sort of filmmaking community through Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Nice.
And you're saying it was nice to design your own thing, create your own thing just for yourself. Yeah. And I feel that as well. I mean, having worked in TV and film for so long, you are doing other people's designs, and that's just the way the process works. That's how the industry works. But I enjoy, now that I'm not really in the industry anymore, I just do my own thing. I do my own designs, and they just evolve. I very rarely work from a pencil sketch or anything. I'll just go, I've got a vague idea, and then I work towards that and see how all the pieces fit together. But you have, as with the War of the Worlds stuff, you've done a fair bit of, I guess you could call it doodling. You've worked out. Yeah, no, you've worked out new concepts for the Cybermen. I've seen some glorious designs for Cybermen from you, and the War of the World stuff. How does that feel for you, as opposed to working on a job? Is that just something you do to relax?
There are just some things you can't put down and stop thinking about. I'm almost over it now, but the interior of the TARDIS is one, the Cybermen, the tripods from War of the Worlds. I don't know what it is about those iconic design problems that I just feel like it's never been fully realized. So I guess you're doing it again and again, trying to find like its critical mass. So,
perfect form.
Yeah, it's perfect form. And it's interesting with the Daleks because they didn't really move off that one that we did, and I feel like in that regard, I feel like we almost did it there. But there are other things that I just feel like you just do it again. It's not quite, the X-wing is a perfect piece of design. I never draw them, No,
you don't need to. You don't need to go back and do those.
I mean, that's glorious, though, because that's all part of your youth, right? That was when you were growing up, and these
Yeah.
things mean something to you, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, you're talking about your Dalek design and whether is it almost, it's still more. But, like, my son Bill and I, Bill's watched all of Doctor Who because I forced him to. And, not, well, he loves it, really. But when we got to Eccleston, those Daleks, he was like, why weren't they always like this? But he was, like, quite young. And he was like, why weren't they always like this? And when they changed, he was like, why have they changed? So as far as my son is concerned, you made the perfect Dalek, because he didn't like them before. Well, he didn't dislike them, but he didn't like them afterwards. So you've done well as far as my son is concerned.
It's really lovely. I mean, someone told me they had the longest screen duration in terms of years, because they always changed a bit in the classic era, the colour scheme, where they almost through the entire run, they've been
They kept blowing them up, didn't they?
The only thing I really want, the only place they didn't listen to me, and they were entirely right not to, is my visuals were all grey and black, like the Genesis of the Dalek, which would have been perfect for me and completely wrong for the show. It's not for me. It was for a younger Saturday, Ant and Dec audience, and Russell and Ed between them. I think I forget. I think it was Russell. He was sort of gold, and Edward was like bronze. So between them, the color scheme was them. I would have gone like the full military, grey and black.
Because they did the military drab olive, didn't they?
They look good
for one episode.
Yeah, they look really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the listeners, Stephen was holding up his T-shirt.
I was. I got a Dalek T-shirt. We've probably got about 5 minutes left. So, I mean, I'm happy to go straight into the outro unless anyone's got any pressing questions.
Well, I wanted to ask Matt how it feels to be really a direct successor to people like Ron Cobb, Chris Foss, Sid Mead. I mean, you are wearing their shoes, really, and you are following on from their tradition.
Yeah, I feel more like we're standing on their shoulders, because they did the groundwork. I mean, that's a very nice way to put it. I can't put myself in the same sentence.
Of course you won't, but other people do, and they'll be right to put you in that position because you are creating iconic spaceships. You are working on the same franchises that they worked on.
Yeah, I mean, it is wonderful. I think the thing I'm missing really is doing some, and this is tricky in Hollywood because we don't make new movies. The thing I feel like we're really missing is doing the new Star Wars or the new Alien, whatever that might be. I mean, that's kind of because then you do get remembered for something new. But I mean, it's a massive privilege. Ron Cobb, particularly of the people you mentioned, he's the one I can relate to his work the most. I could see. I remember I had it's called The Book of Alien.
Yeah, I had that one as well.
And
I've still got it.
That book sort of changed my brain chemistry slightly, and I could see, all of a sudden, I could see the artwork, the set, and the movie. And in that book, they had Geiger's work and Ron Cobb's work, and I loved them both. And I thought, I didn't consciously think. I tried a bit of both when I was growing up. But try to paint like Giger, draw like Ron Cobb, and my head always went technical Ron Cobb.
Yeah, mine always went to Giger.
But I love them both. But it's a massive privilege, and it's very warming to even
your work,
consider that.
If it isn't already, must be in books, or will be in books soon, and people are going, "Oh yes."
Matt's work will be in loads of making of books.
Exactly. So, like, there will be people who are 20, 18, whatever, looking at your stuff and trying to draw your things. I mean, that must feel weird.
That's lovely, and that was a big thing because making of books and art of books were a huge pre-internet growing up. They were kind of that's where you found out.
Cinefex.
Yeah, Cinefex. There were a few documentaries on TV, but I love art of books. I still buy them, so it's really humbling and a privilege when you do pop up in a book. I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a buzz. Like when some of the stuff that I made ended up as toys, and I mean, obviously, loads of stuff that you make has ended up as toys, and I felt from Doctor Who just going like, oh, this is really cool. Somebody's made it.
It's nice. It doesn't get boring either. It's and you're very lucky on a movie that would happen to my work and Mark's work, because there are way more people on movies who don't have that sort of afterlife. Different departments, they catering, accounts. There's so many people on a movie that don't have that kind of connection. So it's a double privilege in that regard.
Sorry, I was like kind of, if you're a caterer going like kind of, oh, that there, Matt Savage made that. I fed him once.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's thinking that.
Weirdly, really weirdly, I would love to see like this is just my own weird proclivities, I suppose, but I'd love to see this is what we fed everybody every day on a movie set for like 6 months. I would find that fascinating. Nobody else would in the whole world, but I'd read it from cover to cover and be like, "Ooh, I could make that."
Our little absorber of all information ever written.
That's just me being
trays
weird,
of slop.
Okay.
I could definitely make that.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to say that was a really excellent. Well, I'm not afraid to say it, but sadly it's coming to an end. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on, Nat. This is us, beautiful people. We have learned many things of the history of your life. I'm really like kind of impressed at how like in love with some of the work that you do. We've spoken to other people before. I've spoken to a lot of people before who've like lost the vibe for a lot of the stuff they've done. But the way you talk about like the Daleks and the TARDIS and everything is glorious. I love it. I'm so sad that you're not as in love with Star Wars as you once were.
Well, yeah. I mean, I adore those original movies. I just it's like soap operas aren't special because they're on every day. And the more you go back to the well, the less
Beth.
But I still love it. I love it a whole lot less.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Matt, there's one production I want you to work on, but I don't. Would be Fantastic Four, the MCU Fantastic Four.
Oh well, I may have done a few days on that.
Yes, good man.
It looks great. I'm not really involved. I did a few days for them, but it looks really good. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'm hoping they're riffing off a lot of Jack Kirby work. Yeah,
everything they've released would suggest they are going for that vibe.
Fantastic.
There you go. So there you go.
Look at Mark, they're getting industry secrets in an outro.
Whoa, in the outro, everything. We haven't got to the CTA, but it's in the outro. Cool. So that is us this week. We are taking a break from the standard format of topics. So the next fortnight before we get to the excitement of spoopy October, Mark, Holly, and myself are going to be talking about our own experiences, how we met up, why we do what we do, and our own strange geeky excitement, which may include some talk about Thunderbirds and Doctor Who. You never know, and probably definitely aliens.
And Disney's 1997 Hercules side-scrolling game.
I don't believe it. Every episode.
Yeah, but we didn't get a greased leopard in this one.
We didn't get a greased leopard. No one mentioned the greased leopard at all, not even at the end.
No, nobody mentioned it.
So, it is goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me.
The power of the quadruple goodbye. Thank you very much, everyone. Have an amazing week. Much love. Take care of each other.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
You have been listening to A Geek Tragedy with me, Plague Mantle, and my best friend, the excellent Holly Properly, and our actually famous guy, Mark Caldery. If you like this, there is plenty more at patreon.com/A Geek Tragedy. Production is by Kit Brutnell. Our logo and artwork is by markcaldery.com. Music is by Borislaw Kozielski. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Geek Tragedy. Email us at geektragedypodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe, leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget to tell all your geeky friends. Also, a big shout out to all of our genius geeks. We adore each and every one of you, and of course, much love. Take care of each other.